into Purple Daily. Phil Mackey, Judd Zulgad, Declan Goff, and every week, every Friday, we comb through the archives of our friends at SKOL Reddit for fun questions and topics and things that we can highlight and riff off of. And so, Declan Goff, what do you got for us today from SKOL Reddit?
Yeah, a few weeks ago, this guy, Harrison0918, posted his top 10 games in the Mike Zimmer era. Obviously, number one is the Minneapolis Miracle. I think we all can unanimously agree on that. That probably was the best game. But that's
the greatest game in Vikings history.
True. So there's some great games on here too that Mike Zimmer coached since he's been here in 2014, and I'm sure we're gonna debate on where these fall from 1 through 10.
So we'll go through this list here that they posted, but Judd Zulgad has made his own list.
Oh,
which we will critique and go through. My question though is this a positive list, or is it? Because there's been some amazing and memorable games.
Positive.
Okay.
This is a positive list.
Like the Blair Walsh wide left game was very memorable, but not for positive reasons.
No, this does not.
Correct.
The list that you're about to go through does not acknowledge the badness that's happened.
So number one, Minneapolis Miracle. Number two, the wild card Saints game where they won that game with the Kirk Cousins dime to Adam Thielen.
Yep.
Number three, Vikings come back to beat the Broncos 27-23. In 2019, last year.
That's way too high for that game.
Nice great comeback.
Nice comeback, but it's way too high. It
shouldn't have been in that big of a hole to begin with. Would be the argument there,
really bad half of football. Yes.
Number four on this list is Vikings beat the Packers 20-13 in 2015. The left-handed pass game.
Week 17.
That's a good game.
I'm sorry, week 17?
Yeah.
Yep.
Of 2015, though.
Gotcha. Let's see. The sixth one is Vikings 23, Eagles 21. The Linval Joseph revenge game. Vikings 17, Packers 14 in 2016. That was Sam Bradford on 2 weeks' notice. Had a great game, threw for 300 yards and a bunch of touchdowns on that one. Vikings smoked the Giants 49-17, week 16 of 2015. Odell Beckham Jr. was suspended apparently in that game. Vikings shut the Packers out 16-0 in week 16 of 2017. Vikings beat the Eagles 38-20 last year in week 6. And number 10, Vikings 31, Texans 13 of 2006. What is your list, Judd?
Okay, so my list is a list that includes every possibility of outcome since Zim started to coach this team in 2014. Okay, so just to be clear, I have what I consider to be the most impactful games, win or lose. So this is not a Pollyanna list. This is a list that at times is very good and at times is going to drag up some tortured memories from the time that Mike Zimmer has coached this team.
I feel like, you know what, if we're being, as honest and objective as we can here, any list period involving Vikings football over any period of time historically, like,
amen.
Our DNA in this town is heartbreak. So there's going to be the reality is there's going to be a little heartbreak any list.
So my first game, of course, as Deck said, the Minneapolis Miracle has to be atop this list. It's one of the great games. I don't know that it's definitely the greatest game in franchise history, but it's up there. And as far as since Mike took over the team in 2014, it's definitely atop the list. There's no question about it.
Totally agree.
I agree. I believe with the list that you just read as well, that the second would be the Vikings' victory over the Saints at the Superdome in the playoff game in the first round this past year. That was a really good game. It was an impressive win. It was a big upset. You beat Drew Brees. Your defense was magnificent. That is my second game. Now, where'd you get the curveball coming in? Now I got the curveballs. Okay. Number 3 on my list, and it's a game that during the course of this conversation, Phil Mackey already has brought up, but I believe it has to be third because there is heartbreak involved. And here's the problem. You had this game won, but for the foot of one player.
Wow.
The 2015 wild card loss, where, if I'm not mistaken, you were about to pull, even though the game was at home, you were about to pull the upset. I believe, if I am correct on this, the Seahawks were favored in this game. And if the Vikings win, I also believe that they would have gone and played the Cardinals. And all you had to do with seconds left in that game was had Blair Walsh hit the field goal. Memorable. You actually, it was a miserable day, but you actually had some pretty solid play. You drove down, right? Like, a lot of things about that game should have been the stew for a surprising victory. And so I put that third.
Now that you've kind of brought this game back up, I've got emotions that are bubbling up inside of me about this game. Everything about that game,
Yeah.
except for the idiot kicker missing a 27-yarder for absolutely no reason. Everything about that game was perfect for one of the most memorable wins in Vikings history, right? It's playoffs.
Yep.
You're an underdog. You're kind of an upstart because you've got this young quarterback and this new head coach, and it's everything about it is new beginnings for the Vikings. You're playing a random season outdoors, and so you've got one of the coldest games in NFL history. So it's memorable because it's one of the coldest games ever. The Vikings defense absolutely shuts down and stifles Russell Wilson and that unbelievably great Seahawks team.
Mm-hmm.
Teddy Bridgewater, while not spectacular in this game, Teddy Bridgewater is clutch at the end. He makes the throws he needs to. He doesn't give the game away like some young quarterbacks would in that. Like the moment didn't seem too big for Teddy. And you wind up grinding out that Seahawks team to having the ball and ready to win. Like everything was there for it to be one of the most memorable games in Vikings history.
Yep.
And then Blair Walsh shuts out.
And who fumbled too? Adrian Peterson.
That's right. Adrian
That was a
fumbled too.
killer.
Yep. So, I mean, it's definitely not one of the most positive experiences in Vikings history because of what happened at the end.
In my life, yeah.
But it should. But the problem is, it should have been. It was there to be positive.
Yep.
Like everything was there. You didn't lay an egg and play poorly. It was a miserable day. Teddy played a Teddy type of game. You're in that game. You're playing a great quarterback, and you basically have that game in your hands. And Peterson fumbles, and Walsh misses the kick.
All right. What's the next one?
Sorry,
I'm getting.
Yep. Sorry, guys. Number 4 was also on the list that Phil read. The Vikings beating the Packers to finish the 2015 regular season in Lambeau, which clinched the division title. That was a nice year. That was a big win. And as I recall, am I right in saying that previous to that, for a few years where the Vikings had also struggled, the Packers had the Vikings number. Aaron Rodgers had picked them apart. Their defense stunk at times.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a game that I think a lot of us thought they probably have no chance. They won. That was one of the first games where I think we said, "Oh, this guy can coach."
Yeah, for sure.
This guy can coach,
and he still can coach.
Yep.
I mean, this is the Mike Zimmer era in general has just been a rock solid era of Vikings football without that thing that we've been missing for 60 years in this town. So, all right, what's next?
What's that, Phil? Number 5, the Vikings beating the Eagles at the Link, Week 5, 2018, as a response to and it was not a response that basically even the score, it did not, but it was still a nice win to the title game loss in Lincoln Financial Field the year before. And this was also a game where there is no question that Kirk Cousins played really well, had a nice game, and in what ultimately became a disappointing first year for Cousins as a Viking, this was one game where Kirk Cousins made some really, really nice plays.
I would argue that game for Kirk Cousins is one of the biggest and best performances of his career. I think the game against the Saints game last year, the second half against the Saints, is probably the best half of football he's played in terms of just like making throws in a big moment. But that game, if you look at because he didn't have that many big wins with Washington, and he really hasn't. He's only had probably 3 or 4 or 5 like really big wins as a Vikings quarterback. He wins the games that you would expect him to win.
Mm-hmm.
And that performance against the Eagles on the road, no interceptions, 300 plus yards passing, and was damn near perfect in that game, especially when it counted.
Yeah. So that is my 5th on my list of the 10 greatest games, or I should say not greatest, most memorable Zimmer coach games since he became coach of this team in 2014. Mm-hmm. Number 6, and I'm going to weave 6 and 7 together as a daily double of sorts.
Wow.
Number 6, it's not so much the game as what the game at that point in time signified, or we thought it did. How about that one?
Okay.
Vikings crushed the Texans in Week 5 in 2016 to improve to 5-0, and we all thought, oh my God, this Bradford trade. Oh, Rick Spielman, you're a genius, and Zim, you're a genius, and Teddy's hurt, and you're still.
It was 5-0. It was 5-0.
5-0.
Yep.
Yeah, no, but it was yes. So, and the next week was your bye week.
Yep.
So you're perfect at that point. It's basically playoffs or bust, right? 5 games in.
Super Bowl, I think.
Okay.
Dude, this is the thing.
Say what you want.
Since we're picking some scabs here. It's happened like 3 times to the Vikings where they started 5 or 6-0 or something since the year 2000, and they've whiffed on the 03. They started like 6-0.
Yep.
The thing that happens for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is 6. 7 is coming out of that bye. Vikings lose at Philadelphia. They're 5-1, and that's the game where Zim goes to the podium post game at 5-1. Okay, and calls, I think, the offensive line soft.
Well, that's one of the worst games in Vikings history. So now I feel like your list is getting
It's
convoluted.
memorable. It's memorable.
Okay.
No, I'm tying together. That was, there should be no way at 5-1 that you say to yourself, that was really not good.
Yeah, he called
the
the
coach is
offensive line
mad.
soft or something after the game.
And it was going into that bye that we've got the conflicting reports now of he brought in what, stuffed animals. According to some,
that's the one where he slaughtered the stuffed animals.
And what fat. And so that whole thing, if the last game in 2015 to get the Vikings into the playoffs and win the division at Green Bay was this eureka, oh my gosh, this guy can really coach moment. That tied together of games in 2016 was, what the hell is this? Like, why are you so upset about one loss?
I do love the tactic of putting bloody and slashed up stuffed animals. I
Zim
really
claims
feel like,
he didn't do it
I feel
now.
like parents should use that tactic more often to scare their kids.
Zim claims he didn't do
Listen, you didn't make your bed. Oh, what's that? Yeah, that's Elmo with his head cut off and blood coming down.
And there's more.
My childhood,
right.
yeah.
And there's more coming.
Yeah.
And there's more to come if you don't do this. Number 8 on my list is, I believe, from the list that you read, Phil Mackey, was 3rd, which I think is too high, but I do think it can make the list. The comeback win against the Broncos, in part because Cousins, for the most part, you don't think of him as being the quarterback to lead a comeback win like that. Now, yes, you played one half of football that Sunday that was absolutely brutal at home. And yes, Stephon Diggs was sort of the heart and soul of that day, not Kirk. But you really thought at halftime that was the Buffalo game, which does not, by the way, make my list, but probably comes close. But you probably thought that was the Buffalo game, and they came back and won. So I think it can make the list. I think having a 3rd on the list is
There's
too
one
high.
that you haven't gotten to yet that I'm appalled by, but
Me too.
Continue going. Are we at 10 now?
No, I'm at 8 now.
Okay.
I think I might not have it, though. I might have forgotten one. Number 9 on my list. Sorry, I got to do it. This wasn't so much heartbreak because the game was so bad, but I think it has to make the Zim list. The loss at Philadelphia in the 2000 season 17 conference title game.
I feel like,
I mean, you come down and score a touchdown.
I need to go look at what was the name of the original list that we were riffing off of? The top 10 Vikings games of the Zimmer era.
But I changed the rules.
You have now hijacked this list.
You've
hijacked this list.
Give me credit. I changed the rules of the list to be the most memorable, good and bad, okay? I feel like just a celebration. It's not right.
Is the Blair Walsh game on your list again at 10 here?
No. My last game is the end of the regular season 2017 shutout of the Packers. That's my last game. Shutout of the Packers in Lambeau Field 2017.
I
might have missed one earlier on, but what about the Aaron Rodgers collarbone game?
I don't have that one.
Oh,
but that can be on the list. Okay.
You guys, you're sleeping on one more too.
Okay. This list is not definitive.
I personally think this is the best non-playoff win in the Mike Zimmer era for the Vikings. This was in 2017. Vikings hosting the Rams, 7-2, number 1 offense in the league, and the Vikings win 24-7. And that was the crowning moment of, oh my God, Case Keenum is actually going to do this, and the Vikings can go to a Super Bowl.
I like it.
Number 1 offense that Sean McVay came in with. And that Rams team was they didn't go to the Super Bowl that year, but Matt LaFleur, Jared Goff, Sean McVay coming in, and Zimmer held them to 7 points.
I like it.
That game was tied at 7 going into the fourth quarter, and the Vikings at home scored 17.
Was it really tied at 7?
It was, yeah.
Actually,
I've forgotten that.
They scored like a minute into the fourth, but
actually, what happened was the Vikings gave up a touchdown on the first drive of the game. Todd Gurley ran for a touchdown, and then the Vikings scored 24 unanswered points to win that game, and they held the Rams to basically not like the Rams in that game had 45 rushing yards. With Todd Gurley was incredible. And they mostly dinked and dunked to the air in the passing game.
That's a good one, Declan.
I would even didn't they have a game against the Rams the next year too where they lost?
Yes.
And it
that
was
game?
just a shootout. It was a super fun
I believe
shootout
Thielen
game.
fumbled. Was that the big Thielen fumble that they ran back to? Yeah, that was on there.
So, all right, Judd hijacked it a little bit there in Judd fashion.
My
Had to
interpretation.
throw a couple
My
daggers in.
interpretation was different from the Reddit guy. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Me and the Reddit guy, we had a different interpretation of this.
So that's Judd's SKOL Reddit list of the 10 most memorable games in the Mike
Hey,
Zimmer era.
I'm sorry, the Seahawks game has to be high.
It's got to be in it. And again, like that's one of Mike Zimmer's best coached games.
Yes,
He did. There's nothing he could have done differently other than like I don't know, just having a kicker that doesn't need brain surgery.
If we were to come up with a top 5 list of Vikings games that they lost that they shouldn't have, and they didn't get blown out, and you look back at that game to this day and say, damn, how did they not win that game? That one's probably atop the list,
it's
right?
number one.
It's number 1 on the list, right?
It's for sure number 1. Absolutely. All right, that's a wrap on this episode of Purple Daily. Thanks for hanging out with
I'll
us.
be more positive next time.
Yeah, no, you're not.
I know.
It's fine.
I know.
You can find us in podcast form on Apple, Spotify, or ScoreNorth.com, and in YouTube form on youtube.com/ScoreNorth. Have a good weekend.